Time now is 33 after 11. We're back on the record with take two. Today's date is still the 12th day of November, year 2008.
Mr. Ewers, I've got some documents I'm going to go through with you. I don't plan to spend much time, especially on this initial set. But let me hand you what has been marked as here's exhibit number 2. Robert, I got a copy of that for you. If you want. I don't have copies of all of them.
Okay.
Let me know when you finish reading. Yes, sir. Have you ever seen that before?
It looks like a document that I've seen, but I can't verify it exactly.
All right. According to that document, you were made an officer of ICF. Do you recall that ever happening?
No, sir.
When is the first time you saw that document?
Mr. Green, I can't answer that question truthfully. I don't recall when I...
Would it have been in the context of a lawsuit, or would it have been sometime before all this lawsuit stuff started?
I'm looking at a fax here that showed January 4, 2002. So...
And do you think you saw it at or around that time?
I could have.
Okay. Do you recall any discussions about you becoming an officer of ICF?
I recall that it was brought up to me one time, but I never took much meaning to it.
All right. Did you ever resign as an officer of ICF?
No, sir, because in my opinion, I was never appointed an officer of ICF.
Did you ever respond to that document saying,
No, sir.
hey, you're crazy, I'm not an officer of ICF, or anything like that?
I don't remember if I responded writtenly, verbally, or how I might have responded.
How did you first find out about ICF?
The first meeting I had in late 1999 when I first met Mr. Smith.
And where did you meet Mr. Smith?
Buckley, Howe, Matthews, White, and Janik law firm.
At their law office in Fountain View?
Yes, sir.
When did you first meet Mr. Liner?
At the meeting that I alluded to previously in late April, early May of 2000.
What was your understanding at that time of the relationship between Mr. Liner and ICF?
I didn't have an understanding.
Did you know that they were somehow related?
No, sir.
Pardon?
No, sir.
I want to hand you what has been marked as Ewers number 5.
Sir, could I get you to move your to the corner?
This one?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
And I'm not going to ask you details about the document. I'm just going to ask you, have you ever seen that?
It looks like a document that I've seen. I can't attest that it's the same document that I have a recollection that I've seen. No, sir.
And what is the date on that document, sir? Should be on.
Effective 9th day of May 2000.
Do you believe you may have seen that document at or around that time, or
No,
sometime
sir.
in 2000?
No, sir.
What year do you think you might have seen it for the first time, or a document similar to it?
2002.
Okay. And what was the context of you seeing it in 2002?
If my memory is not failing me, it was in a context to a conversation that I had had with Anthony Feldman.
And Mr. Feldman was a lawyer from UK?
Yes, sir.
And what was his role? Who did he represent?
He represented the plaintiffs in the lawsuit against Mr. Herron.
And what was the communication about that assignment?
That he had received these documents from Mr. Smith.
Do you have any idea what part of 2002 that was?
No, sir. And I'm not even sure it was 2002. It could have been 2003.
Okay. Did you have any, that document on its face at least purports to be an assignment of interest from a liner to ICF, does it not?
I really didn't take the time to read
Okay.
it.
Can I see it back?
Yes, sir.
Second. Well, it defines, and I'm not asking you legally, I'm just asking what the document appears to do. I'm not asking you to admit that it does what it purports to do, okay? But basically, it's conveying from Mr. Liner to International Children's Fund all right, title, without limitation of the proceeds derived from it and the proceeds derived from it from the certain profit sharing agreement dated May 9th, 2000 between Liner and Cho. Is that what your understanding of that document was when you saw it? That is at least is what it was purported to do?
And when I saw a document that appears to be the same, that I can't attest that they are the same.
I understand.
There was also several other documents in which there was assignments from Mr. Liner to ICF, but then there was a document from ICF back to Mr. Liner, and then there seemed to be another document. So I wasn't for sure exactly what.
Okay. There was this assignment from Liner to ICF, and there was another document assigning 50% of the proceeds back to Mr. Liner. Is that what you're referring to?
Sir,
You don't remember?
No, sir. I don't know if there was 50% or whatever. You used the word 50%.
Okay. But my question to you, when you saw it, it was your belief that this document at least purported to assign Mr. Liner's portion to ICF. There may have been other documents that did other things, but your understanding of this document was that it was trying to assign Mr. Liner's ownership in the profit sharing agreement to ICF.
My understanding of it when I saw the first document, a document that appears to be this document, was that it was an attempt. There was an attempt to hide Mr. Smith's role in the Herron deal from Mr. Cho because of Mr. Cho's dislike of Mr. Smith.
Right. That's not my question to you. I'm asking what the document on its. So you're answering the question what the purpose or intent was. I'm asking you, did the document appear to transfer interest from Mr. Liner to ICF?
Yes, sir. And I apologize. I thought you asked me what was my impression or understanding of this document, so I apologize for my previous answer.
No need for any apology. Did you talk to Mr. Liner at any time about who owned the profit sharing agreement? Other than Mr. Cho?
That would have probably been in sometime in 2002 when I asked him about it.
Before or after you entered into power of attorney with him?
After.
When you entered into a power of attorney with him, didn't you say, hey, do you own this deal or somebody else own this deal? Or?
No, sir. Because the contract was signed between Mr. Herron, or the letter of understanding was signed between Mr. Herron and Mr. Liner.
Did you have what did Mr. Liner tell you in 2002 when you asked him if anybody else owned part of the deal?
Yes, he explained to me that Mr. Smith had a percentage of it,
Right.
and that Buckley, Matthews, White, Howell, and Janik had a piece of it.
And you knew that sometime in 2002?
Yes, sir.
And you had no reason to dispute that?
No, sir.
I want to hand you Ewer's Exhibit number 1. Can you identify that for us, please?
Yes, sir. It's a power of attorney and mandate
From whom to whom?
from Mr. Liner to Larry Ewers.
And what did you understand your job to be, or your assignment, or whatever label you want to put on it, under that power of attorney?
That I had the power to pursue Mr. Herron in the legal suit that was filed in the UK.
Was that document limited to the UK?
I've not read it all, so it mentions the case number and all.
And
It doesn't limit. It doesn't, unless I need to read it in detail.
well, go ahead.
I want to put on the record objection to form of the question.
All right, is it your understanding, well, let me go ahead and get the others in front of us too. I want to hand you Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 4. You said there were 3 powers of attorney. Do these represent the powers of attorney that we discussed earlier?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, let me know when you're ready.
It's all right.
Do these represent the powers of attorney we discussed earlier that you had with Mr. Lang?
They look like the documents, yes, sir.
And is it your general understanding that these powers of attorney allowed you to pursue claims and try to find money related to the profit sharing agreement?
Yes, sir.
And at least by sometime in 2002, you knew that part of the profit sharing agreement was owned by ICF and Buckley Matthews.
Yes, sir.
Right. And you utilized these powers of attorney to try to find money under that profit sharing agreement.
Yes, sir.
Right. We know about the lawsuit in Boston. That's one instance in which you would have utilized your authority under the power of attorney, correct?
Also utilized the permission of the trustee.
Pardon?
Also, you had the permission of the trustee to file the litigation in Boston.
Okay. But you may have had permission of the trustee of the bankruptcy court in UK, is that what
Yes,
you're
sir.
saying? But another part of your authority was this power of attorney.
Yes,
or
sir.
these powers of attorney. Where else have you ever utilized these powers of attorney?
No other place.
No other lawsuits any place?
No, sir.
No other filings of any kind of government filings or filings anywhere?
No, sir.
Not with any banks or anything like that?
No, sir.
Mr. Samuels' name was, first name was Leslie. Do you know Leslie Samuels
No, sir.
with Cleary, Gothard,
Sir, can we stop just a moment?
Sure.
Mr. Smith has continued the same facial expressions and little things. It was brought out by Mr. Painter. And in all due respect, it would be very much appreciated if he would contain himself and quit making facial expressions and shaking his head. And
Okay, you just asked him to do that. Do you know,
And Mr. Green, I'm just going to say for the record that if this conduct continues after 2 warnings, we're going to have to suspend the deposition because it's harassment of the witness. So just be instructed.
it's your position that facial expressions are harassment of a witness?
When the facial expressions are accompanied by mouthing obscenities, yes.
Do you know a Leslie Samuels of the law firm of Cleary, Gotham, Stern, and
no,
Hemp? Never heard of that before?
no, sir.
And you've never heard of a Mr. Samuels before?
No, sir.
Have you ever heard of a Texas Capital Bank in Cayman Islands?
Mr. B. Georgie mentioned Texas Capital Bank in the Cayman Islands.
Have you ever had any dealings with them whatsoever,
No, sir.
directly or indirectly?
No, sir. Sir, let me be sure I understood your question.
Sure.
You're asking about Texas Capital Bank, Cayman Islands only. You're not asking me if I've had any dealings with Texas Capital Bank.
I appreciate that difference, and I appreciate you pointing that out. Yes, I'm asking Cayman Islands only.
Okay,
Right.
and the answer is no, sir.
What are your dealings with Texas Capital Bank, not Cayman Islands?
I opened up account for Phoenix Mining and Minerals and for Energy Group of South Texas at Texas Capital Bank on Mulberry in San Antonio, Texas.
All right, but no dealings whatsoever with any kind of Cayman Island branch or anything like that?
No, sir.
Have you ever heard of Matthews Life Insurance Company of Turks and Caicos?
No, sir.
No idea what that might be?
No, sir.
Have you ever heard of Larry W. Ewer's insurance company of Turks and Caicos?
No, sir.
You certainly don't know of any life insurance, any kind of insurance company. Well, let me ask you this way: you're not involved in any kind of insurance company.
The only insurance company I had, sir, was when I was involved in the auto dealership.
You owned a part of an insurance company at that point?
No, sir. We ran our credit life and accident and health that we sold on installment contracts through a off balance sheet or off financial statement, and that entity could have been at that time. I don't remember if we called it Larry Ewers, but the insurance company we was using was Great Southern Life.
But it wasn't anyway.
No, sir.
Let me finish the question. Just make. I know you're anticipating my question, but let me finish it so it's clear for the record. That was in no way involved in Turks and Caicos
No, sir.
or any offshore.
No, sir.
And you're not involved in any kind of insurance company offshore anywhere.
Not that I'm aware of. No, sir.
Well, if don't you think if you were involved with it, you'd be aware of your involvement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you involved in any kind of company offshore?
No, sir.
Never have been.
No, sir.
Don't have any accounts offshore,
No, sir.
directly or indirectly.
No, sir.
No entity that you're involved in has accounts offshore.
No, sir.
Do you know anyone that has accounts offshore?
No, sir. I mean, not for a fact. I'm sure I know people that may have offshore accounts or may not. I don't ask them where their bank accounts are.
Has anybody at Buckley Matthews ever indicated to you they have any kind of offshore account?
No, sir.
Any kind of offshore affiliation with any kind of corporation?
No, sir.
Or any company or any entity?
No, sir.
And you are not involved with any entity, corporation, or person that you know has any affiliation with any bank, company, insurance company, or anything like that offshore?
My answer remains the same as previously. No, sir.
Who is, or what is Emory Resources?
That's the company that Mr. Weiss owns.
We had been provided with bank records of EPD from 2000 to 2004. Over that period of time, there are various deposits made from Emory Resources or Mr. Marchman. You're familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Adding those up, they amounted to well over $1 million. What was the purpose of those deposits?
I believe I've already answered that question, sir. It was.
Will we explain it to me then? I'm sorry.
It was in the funding of the pursuit of funds belonging to Christopher Patrick Heron.
All right. So any deposit coming from either Larry Marchman or Emory Resources into an account that you're affiliated with would be for the purpose of trying to locate Heron's funds.
Some portion of the funds were for the purpose of locating funds belonging to Christopher Patrick Heron.
What was the rest of the money for?
Well, there was money that was allocated for the running of the office in San Antonio.
What office?
Phoenix Mining and Minerals, LLC, Energy Group of South Texas, LLC.
Why would Emory be giving money toward that?
in the pursuit of oil and gas transactions.
So Emory had a contract?
No, sir, no contract.
What kind of deal did Emory have to get a return on its investment?
I believe I've answered that question where Mr. Weiss, who owns Emory, was to receive 33% of any monies collected from the Heron transaction.
All right. What about the other money?
If we did a transaction, then he would have a part of that.
So anything that Phoenix did, he'd have a part of?
If he so elected, it would be deal by deal.
But what did he get in return for his paying for the sticks and bricks of Phoenix?
I think I've answered that, sir.
Well, maybe I'm just slow and don't understand it. Please
if
answer
he
again.
elected, if we brought a deal to him and he elected to participate in the deal, then he would get a piece of it. If
What-
nothing was brought to the deal, I mean, if he elected not to, then he would not participate in it and would not get any return on his investment.
So would he have to put more money in the deal if he participates?
Yes, sir.
So what does he get for his paying your rent?
I just explained it, sir.
Just the opportunity to
Yes, sir.
invest?
Yes, sir.
Did he get a sweetheart deal on the investment because he paid for your rent?
Sir, each deal stood on its own that we may have brought to Mr. Weiss.
Did you bring any deal to Mr. Weiss?
Yes, sir.
Did he, I think you've already said you didn't get involved with him on any of them though, correct?
No, sir. I believe my answer was that none of them closed.
Did any of them get papered up?
A deal on the Bakias transaction in Laredo got papered up when we were dealing with NGP.
Do you know the source of the money that Emory was putting into the EBD account?
No, sir.
I assume Mr. Weiss would know that?
He owns the company, so you're asking me to make an assumption for Mr. Weiss, as you call him.
Were you ever sued by a Las Vegas casino?
Yes, sir.
What was that about?
$45,000 that I signed a note on for a gentleman by the name of Bob Hatch.
What was that note for?
Bob Hatch was trying to help Mr. Mortimer and I secure refinancing of real estate in Conroe, Texas.
How did that resolve?
Nothing ever took place.
How are you making a living now? How are you making a living now?
I work in and around with my father-in-law.
Describe for me what that means.
We look for oil and gas, oil field equipment to buy. We look for producing properties.
That a successful business?
I guess success would be defined by the one that put the definition of success on it. My father-in-law has been extremely successful.
Do you have an employment contract with him, or is it,
This is my father-in-law, sir.
so it's just a handshake deal, you work on the deals and get a piece of them?
Yes, sir.
I've had some father-in-laws, I'd want it to be in writing, but That would have been my fault, not yours. Not theirs, I'm sorry. Do you go to Las Vegas very much?
No, sir.
When's the last time you went?
3 or 4 years ago.
Not to Jersey City or any other place like that either?
I've never been to any other. I've not even been to a gambling casino in Louisiana.
Okay. So you've been to no other gambling casino except the last one you went to was in Las Vegas, and you've never been to one outside of Las Vegas?
No, sir.
Why did Mr. Weiss sue Charles Sherman, I'm sorry?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know?
No, sir.
You weren't involved in that at all?
No, sir.
You know Mr. Sherman, do you not?
Yes, sir.
He's represented you before,
Yes, sir.
and so if Mr. Weiss sued Mr. Sherman for $50,000, you don't know anything about it?
No, sir.
You certainly weren't involved in any way with the $50,000.
No, sir.
And this is probably swallowed by my previous question, but you've never used the liner powers of attorney in Canada?
No, sir.
Have you ever looked for money in the Philippines?
Yes, sir.
What did you do to look for money in the Philippines?
Hired an attorney.
Which attorney did you hire?
You can answer that part.
Sir, I right offhand, I can't remember his name. The investigator that the attorney hired was someone by the name of Eduardo.
Eduardo?
Yes, sir.
And that came to a dead end?
Yes, sir.
No lead whatsoever?
I'm going to instruct you not to answer any questions that would invade attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, same objection to the lack of response, but we'll deal with that later. Same objection with regard to the lack of a response, and we'll deal with that later. Do you know who the ACC, what the ACC is? Ever heard of that?
The only ACC I've ever heard is the Atlantic Coast Conference in football.
Yeah. I heard of that one too. But other than that one, you haven't?
No, sir.
Did you ever appoint someone else to utilize the liner powers of attorney?
No, sir.
So far as you know, they have never been used in any context other than the Boston litigation and the UK litigation.
As far as I know, and most definitely without me doing so, have not.
And you don't know about anything about any lawsuits in Canada,
No, sir.
New York?
No, sir. I do know that Canada and New York was used and concocted by Anthony Feldman to get Mr. Playdot off on a side trail so that he would stop interfering with attorneys' attempts to contact those who had some type of relationship with Mr. Herron.
And
This was concocted by Mr. Feldman.
And did you go along with that scheme?
Much to my dismay, yes, sir.
Because it involved lying to Mr. Playdot?
I didn't use the word lying to myself, and that may be a fault of mine. we misled Mr. Playdot because of the numerous letters and correspondence that we had sent to him demanding that he stop doing this. And then later on, I came to believe that Mr. Feldman concocted this story about Canada and New York in the betterment of the value of his law firm when he sold it to Garcia Martin.
Do you know anything about any frozen money anywhere?
That was part of the charade that we used.
Part of the charade that you participated in?
Yes, sir.
Your intentional misleading of Mr. Playdot?
Intentional, is that the word?
You intentionally misled Mr. Playdot?
For the reasons that I've so expressed, yes, sir.
Right. But it was an intent upon your part to state a misrepresentation upon which you thought he would rely.
Objection form.
Much to my dismay today, yes, sir.
Right. And why is it to your dismay today?
Because I was involved in something that turned out to be differently than what I thought we were doing it for. And Mr. Playdot was fully aware of it, as his letter that he wrote in March of 2004 to the trustee, which he confirmed that this story was concocted by Mr. Feldman.
Objection in response to this. But you knew when you were communicating with him that what you were communicating to him was a lie.
Objection form.
I knew it was false. Yes, sir.
It's not something you found out later was a lie. You knew when you were communicating to him that it was a lie.
Form.
I knew it was false. Yes, sir.
Well, it was a lie, wasn't it?
Form.
You keep using the word false. It was a lie, wasn't it?
That's your word. My word is it was false.
Why won't you admit it was a lie?
Because, sir, it was false, and you put the definition on it.
Okay, is there any, what is your definition of a lie?
Sir, I'm not going to get into Mr. Webster's with you.
Well, I'm trying to find out what you mean by that, okay?
The
Surely,
information that I gave Mr. Feldman was false information to keep, Mr. Playdot, to keep Mr. Playdot from interfering and costing us additional money and creating additional problems for us.
okay, objective response to it. My question is to you, did you lie to him? Now, I want to define lie as giving a false statement you know to be false. Given that definition of lie, did you lie to him?
Form.
By your definition, yes, sir.
Do you know another definition of lie?
As I've already stated, sir, I'm not getting into Mr. Webster's dictionary.
Without looking it up in the dictionary, do you, Larry Ewers, let me finish my question. Do you, Larry Ewers, have a definition of lie other than the one I just gave you?
I stick with my story.
I'm not asking you whether or not you're...
I've accepted your definition of that. I lied to him, Mr. Green.
Okay, that's fine. We can move on. And your purpose in lying to him was to achieve a goal. You got a goal in mind when you were lying to him.
Yes, sir. And that goal was that Mr. Playdot would be over here while we was contacting true contacts of Mr. Heron, and I repeatedly asked him to stop. He was making false statements to the people he was contacting, such as Robert Massoud, that Mr. Spiro represented him and that he would be in attendance at a meeting, those kind of things. He was writing to the Red Cross in Africa, making claims that Robert Massoud was unethical. He was contacting the Royal Falcon Group, on and on and on. So Mr. Feldman and with Mr. Feldman's recommendation, we concocted this story.
Responsive. You told us earlier that Mr. Borgie called you out of the blue. Do you know where he got your phone number?
From Stan Smith?
All right. Didn't you meet him before you called him? He called you?
No, sir.
When did you meet Bobby Howell?
After I had engaged Mr. Bajorgi.
And which would have been when?
2004, late 2003, sometime in the mid 2003 to early 2004.
When did you meet Tom Moss?
Same period.
Did you ever represent to Mr. Pladot in the period of around 2001 that you had reached some kind of agreement with ICF?
Not to my recollection, no, sir.
Would that fit into the scheme of lying to Mr. Pladot?
Sir, if I don't remember making a statement that you alluded to, I can't answer your question.
Well, you told me the purpose of your scheme. I'm trying to say, would that somehow benefit the purpose of the scheme to lie to Mr. Pladot?
Section form.
No, sir.
Okay. Can we go off the record a second?
Going off the record at 12:15.